The Galactic Enrollment Bureau operated on a level of weaponized indifference that was legendary across 3 star systems, functioning as a massive, slow-moving bureaucratic machine where a name was just a string of data and data was meant to be stamped, coded, and cleared without a second thought. In the brightly lit, sterile offices of the sector hub, millions of files were processed daily by overworked clerks who prioritized processing speed far above minor details like accuracy or common sense. It was during a Friday afternoon rush that Leo's digital file crossed the terminal of an administrative clerk whose mind was already focused on the upcoming weekend cycle. Leo was an entirely ordinary Level 1 logistics clerk from Earth Colony 4, a man whose baseline existence was defined by the quiet rhythm of inventory tracking, spreadsheet formatting, and the occasional hazard of a jammed paper sorter or a lukewarm cup of synthetic coffee. The clerk, rushing to clear their desk queue, glanced at the shorthand code on the Terran intake form. The messy, translated script read, Civilian Clerk, Class C. But through a combination of visual fatigue and a poorly calibrated optical scanner, the system flagged it as, Combat Cleaver, Class C. With a definitive, automated digital chime, the system finalized the entry, locked the biometric data, and instantly routed Leo's travel orders to the high-priority military transport network. He was not being sent to the regional supply depot on the colony's moon as he expected. Instead, the bureaucratic gears had officially assigned him to the Apex, the galaxy's most brutal, unforgiving Tier 1 military academy designed specifically to train the most fearsome Apex predators from across the known universe into elite shock troops. Leo received his departure notification on his datapad while organizing a shipment of plastic storage bins, assuming the strange destination name was just a new, overly dramatic corporate rebranding for a regional fulfillment center. 2 weeks later, after a long and disorienting journey aboard a series of increasingly industrial automated transport ships, a standard civilian transit shuttle finally dropped Leo off at the designated coordinates. The shuttle pilot, realizing the coordinates led directly into the restricted airspace of the most dangerous military outpost in the sector, didn't even wait for the landing dust to settle before kicking the thrusters into maximum overdrive, desperate to escape before the base's defensive turrets took notice. Leo was left standing entirely alone in the middle of a massive, red dirt courtyard, blinking against the harsh, blinding glare of a binary sun system that baked the alien landscape into a cracked desert. He looked around, completely out of place in his faded canvas jacket, a pair of worn denim jeans, and sensible walking shoes designed for concrete warehouse floors rather than active combat zones. In his right hand, he held his most prized possession, a heavy, vacuum-sealed, stainless steel travel mug filled to the brim with Earth-blend dark roast coffee, which was the only thing keeping his jet-lagged mind functioning. The architecture surrounding him was terrifyingly hostile, featuring jagged, towering spires of polished obsidian that looked like giant blades cutting into the pale orange sky, interspersed with reinforced bunkers covered in heavy plasma scoring. Automated defense turrets tracked his movements with low, mechanical hums, their red sensor eyes locking onto his chest as he took a tentative step forward. Well, Leo muttered to himself, adjusting the strap of his duffel bag and taking a cautious sip of his coffee. This definitely doesn't look like the central inventory depot I applied for, but I guess everything is bigger out in the deep rim. The welcoming committee at the Apex did not offer orientation tours or hand out informational brochures. They performed raw, unfiltered threat assessments to eliminate weak recruits before they ever crossed the threshold. Senior Instructor Kalen, a towering, four-eyed reptilian warrior whose massive frame was covered in natural, slate-gray bone plating and jagged battle scars, stood on the reinforced observation balcony overlooking the intake courtyard alongside his nervous staff. "What is that pathetic creature?" Kalen growled, his long, heavy tail lashing against the metal floor in pure irritation as he stared down at the solitary human. "It possesses no claws, no visible chitin, no venom glands, and its skin looks entirely soft and unprotected. Is this a practical joke from the Galactic Fleet Council?" Before his assistant could pull up the decrypted datapad to verify the transport manifest, the Academy's automated intake protocol detected a new presence and initiated Step 1 of the standard evaluation, the atmospheric shock test. Heavy, mechanical vents along the courtyard walls hissed open, pumping a thick, rolling wave of purple fog across the dirt. A weaponized, predatory fear gas engineered from the neurotoxins of the Vorvik Empire, designed to instantly stimulate the panic centers of any sentient brain. Within seconds, the other alien recruits who had just entered from the far side of the courtyard, multi-ton behemoths with razor-sharp mandibles and armored plates, collapsed onto the ground, weeping, shrieking, and digging frantically into the dirt in a state of absolute psychological paralysis. Leo, however, simply watched the purple mist roll lazily over his walking shoes, entirely unaffected because human respiratory systems and neural pathways processed the alien compound completely differently. Instead of triggering terror, the unique chemical structure of the gas interacted with the heavy dose of caffeine already circulating in Leo's bloodstream, giving him nothing more than a mild, pleasant energy buzz. He sniffed the air, thought it smelled vaguely like a burning photocopier, and casually walked through the dense cloud to take his place at the intake desk. Up on the high observation balcony, Instructor Kalen's 4 eyes went completely wide with a mixture of profound shock and deeply rooted instinctual alarm as he watched the human stroll through the lethal fog. He is breathing it in," Kalen whispered, his deep voice trembling slightly as he gripped the reinforced steel railing so hard the metal began to warp under his immense strength. "He is actively consuming the weaponized dread of the Vorvik Empire, an atmospheric toxin that could stop a charging dreadnought, and it is doing nothing but making him thirsty." Within an hour of Leo passing through the intake gate, the Academy's internal whisper network had completely taken over the barracks, the mess halls, and the training wings, mutating the truth into a legendary tale of terror. The rumor among the alien cadets became absolute and unquestioned. Earth had intentionally deployed a biologically suppressed, hyper-lethal, Deathworlder, who was so supremely confident in his own destructive capabilities that he openly mocked the Academy's worst tortures. The fact that he wore no armor, carried no plasma weapons, and possessed no natural claws was no longer viewed as a weakness. The alien warriors now interpreted it as a terrifying psychological power move, a sign that the human considered the galaxy's greatest apex predators to be so completely beneath him that he didn't even need to prepare for a fight. Leo was assigned a high-threat tracking profile by the security computers before he even figured out which corridor led to his assigned sleeping quarters. Leo was assigned to Obliterator Squad, a notorious unit specifically assembled from the Academy's most volatile, aggressive, and highly unstable recruits who had failed to integrate into standard formations. His assigned bunkmate was Vorn, a 7-foot-tall reptilian warrior from a massive, high-gravity death world who had spent his entire developmental cycle fighting his siblings for survival and dominance. When Leo first walked into the dark, stone-walled barracks room, Vorn immediately rose from his position, letting out a low, vibrating guttural hiss that shook the metal light fixtures while baring 3 rows of translucent, serrated teeth in a traditional, lethal challenge for the premier bottom bunk. Leo, who was completely exhausted from 14 hours of continuous space travel and entirely misinterpreting the alien's aggressive display as the universal sign of low blood sugar, simply sighed and reached into his canvas jacket pocket. He pulled out a slightly squished, aluminum-wrapped turkey and Swiss sandwich with spicy mustard that he had packed back at the transit hub for his lunch break. "Look, you look incredibly stressed out, big guy," Leo said calmly, snapping the sandwich cleanly in half and holding out the larger piece toward the towering monster. "Here, take this. Flying across the sector always makes my stomach turn upside down, too, so I get it." Vorn instantly froze, his eyes locking onto the offered food as his complex predatory instincts went into a chaotic tailspin. In his culture, offering a share of your personal kill to an unproven warrior without demanding a blood sacrifice or a trial by combat was the ultimate, terrifying alpha demonstration. It carried an implicit, devastating message. "I am so vastly superior to you that I can openly feed you like a helpless hatchling, and there is absolutely nothing you can do to stop me." Trembling with a sudden wave of instinctual submission, Vorn carefully took the sandwich with his massive claws, dropped down to both knees on the hard stone floor, and pledged his life to the strange human chieftain, while Leo just tossed his duffel bag onto the empty mattress, glad they had settled the roommate agreement so peacefully. Over the course of the next 3 weeks, Leo inadvertently conquered every single impossible trial, survival exercise, and tactical scenario the Academy's instructors threw at the cadets. During the infamous Hollow Maze survival test, a grueling exercise designed to test raw hunting instincts under extreme duress, the instructors released a wild shriek beast, a blind, subterranean ambush predator that tracked prey via thermal signatures and intense acoustic sonar, into the shifting labyrinth to hunt the squads down one by one. When the roaring beast successfully cornered Obliterator Squad in a dead-end stone corridor, the giant alien warriors accepted their fate, dropping into defensive postures and preparing to die with honor against an unstoppable force. Leo, however, looked at the charging, multi-limbed monster and didn't see an alien nightmare. Instead, he was instantly reminded of the aggressive stray dingoes and wild dogs that used to raid the shipping containers back at the Earth Colony 4 logistics depot. He calmly reached into his standard emergency survival kit clipped to his belt, pulled out a small, high-frequency digital dog whistle used by warehouse security guards, and blew into it with all his might. To the human ear, the device produced absolutely nothing more than a faint, barely audible metallic click. But to the hypersensitive, sonar-based auditory systems of the shriek beast, the high-frequency vibration was the equivalent of a localized sonic missile exploding directly inside its skull. The massive predator let out a pathetic, high-pitched whine, clamped its heavy paws over its ears, turned completely around, and literally smashed its way through a solid, 3-foot-thick reinforced concrete wall to escape the area. The members of Obliterator Squad looked at Leo with an expression of absolute, terrifying reverence, fully convinced that the human had just utilized an ancient, forbidden telepathic death shout to break the very spirit of the galaxy's most feared predator. By the arrival of the 4th training week, the Galactic High Command had become thoroughly convinced that Earth had hidden a highly classified, Black Ops psychological acid right under their noses to test the structural integrity and military resolve of the entire interplanetary coalition. However, the scheduled final graduation exercise, which was intended to be a grand display of tactical prowess before the visiting generals, was abruptly shattered by a sudden, authentic threat from the outer dark. A rogue mercenary syndicate known as the Iron Maw, heavily armed with illegal military hardware and utilizing stolen stealth cloaking technology, managed to completely bypass the Academy's orbital defense shields and plant electromagnetic disruptors across the power grid. Their objective was highly lucrative: infiltrate the facility, capture the high-ranking alien instructors, and round up the elite cadet squads to sell them off as high-value gladiators and slave shock troops to the highest bidder in the lawless Outer Rim. Within a matter of minutes, the entire Academy fell into a state of total, hardwired emergency lockdown as red warning lights flashed rhythmically across the dark corridors. A massive fleet of autonomous, heavy-class military suppression drones, controlled by the mercenary command cruiser, flooded into the courtyard and trapped the alien cadets inside the main training pavilion. The mercenary leader, a heavily cybernetic warlord named Jax, broadcasted a chilling, static-laced audio message across the emergency comms. Your instructors are bound in stasis fields, your heavy weapons are completely jammed by our virus, and your shield grid is down. Surrender peacefully, or our automated drones will level this pavilion and leave nothing but ash. Inside the crowded training pavilion, the fearsome, highly trained apex predators of Obliterator Squad and the other elite units froze in place, their powerful bodies trembling as they stared down the glowing blue plasma cannons of 40 heavily armed drones hovering just outside the reinforced glass. Their hardwired biological instincts screamed at them to charge into battle, but their tactical training made it abundantly clear that stepping into the open courtyard meant instant vaporization by the overlapping firing arcs of the machines. The terrified alien warriors slowly turned their heads, their eyes landing entirely upon Leo, who was standing quietly near the back of the room. Chieftain Leo, Vorn whispered hoarsely, his massive claws twitching with nervous energy as he prepared for the end. Give us the final command, we are ready to charge those cannons and die to preserve your honor. Leo walked up to the window, peered out at the hovering mechanical fleet, and didn't look heroic or brave. Instead, his face twisted into an expression of deep, profound, and absolute professional annoyance. He recognized those specific machines perfectly. They weren't frontline military hardware at all. They were slightly modified, up-armored Aegis 9 automated freight handlers, the exact same mass-produced autonomous cargo drones that Leo had spent the last 5 years managing, programming, and troubleshooting at the Earth Logistics Center whenever they mixed up shipping containers. "Those absolute idiots," Leo muttered under his breath, turning away from the window and walking directly toward a central security maintenance terminal. They bought surplus industrial warehouse equipment, slapped some plasma guns on the side, and didn't even bother to change the factory default network security protocols. Leo's fingers began to fly across the terminal's alien interface touchscreen with the blinding, hypnotic speed of an experienced office worker who had spent years clearing 10,000 shipping backlogs a day while dealing with broken software. He bypassed the mercenaries' surface-level encryption blocks within seconds, locating the core industrial operating system hiding underneath the stolen military coding. Click, clack, enter. With a final, aggressive slap of his palm against the terminal's console, the 40 heavy military drones outside suddenly locked up midair, their glowing blue plasma weapon arrays instantly sputtering out and losing power. Simultaneously, the drones' hidden, automated mechanical cargo clamps deployed from their undercarriages, snapping into a rigid, defensive warehouse storage configuration as their internal speakers broadcasted a synchronized, booming mechanical voice across the entire valley. Shipping protocol initiated. Receptacle mode activated. Standby for forklift loading. The mercenaries' entire unstoppable automated vanguard had just been safely and permanently locked into a harmless, infinite inventory sorting loop by a mid-level computer command. Before the mercenary commander, Jax, could even comprehend how his army had been disabled, he kicked open the pavilion's reinforced doors with his heavy cybernetic legs, his modification heavy plasma rifle raised in pure rage. "Who did that?" Jax roared into the room, his red cybernetic optic scanning the crowd. "Show yourself, or I kill everyone." Leo, who happened to be standing right next to the entrance door and running on pure, panicked human adrenaline combined with severe coffee withdrawal, didn't stop to think. Acting on pure childhood reflex developed from years of playing amateur baseball on the colony dirt fields, Leo didn't reach for a blaster. Instead, he whipped his solid, heavy stainless steel travel mug directly at the warlord's face. The incredible kinetic force of a human throw, powered by Earth gravity muscle density and structural leverage, was completely outside the alien commander's predictive combat algorithms. Crack! The vacuum-sealed metal cylinder struck Jax perfectly square between his eyes, shattering his cybernetic targeting visor and knocking the massive cybernetic warlord completely unconscious before he could even pull the trigger. 3 hours later, after the local sector fleet arrived to secure the area and round up the remaining leaderless mercenaries, the Academy grounds were officially declared safe. The Galactic Fleet Admiral himself, a legendary commander spanning 2 centuries of active service, stepped onto the central stage of the main training pavilion to personally award the highest medal of tactical excellence to the hero of the hour. The Admiral stood before the assembled crowd of thousands of elite alien warriors, elite instructors, and visiting generals, clearing his throat before inserting Leo's official, newly decrypted Earth file into the primary holographic projector so the entire Academy could witness the credentials of Earth's greatest warrior asset. The massive holographic screen illuminated the dark room, displaying Leo's official Earth colony registration data for everyone to see, but as the Admiral began to read the text aloud, his voice caught in his throat, his mandibles twitched violently, and his eyes widened in absolute, paralyzing existential confusion. The text read, Name, Voss, Dario, Leo. Rank, Level 1 Logistics Clerk, Non-Combat, Civilian Personnel. Specialization, Inventory Auditing, Spreadsheet Maintenance, 40 words per minute typing speed. Current status, Sent to Predator Academy due to data entry error at Regional Sector Hub. The entire pavilion fell into a dead, suffocating silence as thousands of apex predators stared at the glowing spreadsheet, then down at Leo, who was standing awkwardly on the stage while nervously tugging at the collar of his faded canvas jacket. Vorn stared at the holographic document, his powerful reptilian mind spinning as he tried to reconcile the data. He is an office clerk? He counts plastic boxes and organizes digital rows for a living. The admiral slowly removed his ceremonial military cap, looking down at the footage of Leo effortlessly conquering their deadly trials with a shipping code, and then at the shattered cybernetic armor of the mercenary leader who had been taken down by a piece of kitchenware. A cold wave of pure terror washed over the old admiral's face as he leaned into the live microphone, his voice trembling as he spoke the truest words of his career. If this is what an average human office worker can achieve when his afternoon is mildly disrupted, may the stars protect us if this galaxy ever accidentally recruits one of their actual soldiers. On the floor below, the entire cohort of elite alien predators dropped down to both knees, pressing their foreheads to the red dirt in absolute, trembling worship before the undisputed god of the spreadsheets, while Leo just looked at his dented travel mug and wondered if his new promotion came with a better office coffee machine. If you like the video, make sure to like and subscribe my channel.